Bigfoot seen in Huron National Forest. In an untold location within the remote expanse of Huron National Forest, Michigan, I planned a weekend getaway with my girlfriend Lisa to escape the everyday grind. Huron National Forest, known for its dense canopy, towering trees, and serene beauty, was the perfect setting for a tranquil camping trip. We arrived late in the evening, the sky already fading into twilight, unable to locate the clearing I had visited in the past. With limited daylight, we hastily set up our pop-up camper on a quiet fire trail, surrounded by the imposing silhouettes of ancient pines. As the last light of day disappeared, the forest came alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures. The distant hoots of owls, the rustling of leaves, and the occasional chirp of crickets provided a comforting backdrop to our evening. We sat on the camper steps, enjoying the peace and quiet. Lisa leaned against me, her head on my shoulder, as we sipped our coffee and shared stories about our week. It was in this moment of tranquility that the night took a sinister turn. Suddenly, the peaceful ambiance shattered with a horrifying noise from about 100 yards away. It was a low, guttural growl, followed by the frantic yelps of a canine in distress. The chilling sounds of a creature's violent end echoed through the trees, leaving us both on edge. Lisa's grip on my arm tightened, her eyes wide with fear. "What was that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't have an answer, and that terrified me even more. We decided to retreat into the camper, securing the door tightly. Although I had several firearms for protection, the unsettling noise kept us both wide awake for hours. Every creak of the camper and rustle of leaves outside made us jump. We sat in silence, listening intently for any sign of danger. The night seemed to stretch on forever, each minute feeling like an eternity. The next morning, I burned and buried our garbage, still rattled by the previous night's events. Despite the eerie feeling, I decided to unload one of my rifles into a nearby stump, hoping the noise would deter any lingering predators. As I sipped my morning coffee, the forest's silence was shattered again by strange noises in the distance. It sounded like something heavy moving through the trees, sometimes up high and sometimes on the ground, steadily approaching our campsite. The closer it got, the more I realized this wasn't a normal forest creature. Lisa's anxiety peaked, and she insisted I grab the rifle. But it was unloaded in the truck, and I knew fumbling for it would leave us vulnerable. We quickly packed up, keeping a wary eye on the tree line. At one point, the noises grew so close that I resorted to laying on the horn, hoping to scare whatever it was away. As we hurriedly packed up our campsite, the strange noises grew louder and closer. It felt as though the forest itself was closing in on us. Lisa's face was pale, her eyes wide with fear. "What is it?" she whispered, her voice trembling. I didn't have an answer, and that terrified me even more. Suddenly, a series of loud thuds echoed through the forest, followed by a deep, guttural growl. It was so powerful that I could feel it in my chest. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I knew we had to stay calm and escape safely. I grabbed our last few belongings and shoved them into the truck, my hands shaking. As we climbed into the truck, I glanced back towards the forest. For a brief moment, I saw a massive, shadowy figure moving between the trees. It was taller than any man, covered in dark, matted hair. Its eyes glowed with an eerie light, reflecting the faint morning sun. It was watching us, assessing us. I slammed the door shut, started the engine, and we sped down the fire trail towards the main road. The creature didn't follow, but the sense of being watched didn't leave me until we were miles away from Huron National Forest. We drove straight to a nearby store, still shaken. The staff hadn't heard any similar stories recently, but when I got home and looked up local Bigfoot reports, I found numerous accounts of strange, intimidating behaviors in the area. Once home, the reality of the encounter began to sink in. I couldn't shake the image of the creature from my mind. I spent hours researching Bigfoot sightings in Michigan, finding many reports that matched our experience. Each account described massive, hairy creatures with glowing eyes, strange noises, and a pervasive sense of being watched. The consistency of these stories only solidified my belief that what we encountered was real. Lisa and I sat down and talked about what had happened. She confessed that she had been skeptical about Bigfoot until that night. The fear in her eyes mirrored my own. We decided to take extra precautions on future camping trips, ensuring we always had a means of quick escape and keeping our firearms within easy reach. Years later, living in south-central Ohio, my fascination with the unknown hadn't waned. While fishing at Pine Creek, I often felt a presence watching me, an eerie feeling that eventually drove me to invite a friend along. One night as we fished, we heard pebbles being thrown into the water when our backs were turned. We were armed, but the unnerving sensation persisted until a large rock splashed into the creek as we left, accompanied by an overwhelming smell of decay. Another incident occurred when my son, an avid outdoorsman like myself, showed me a picture of a massive footprint he found near a waterfall. We called a Bigfoot research group, and they confirmed the cast was a significant find, measuring 14 inches long and 6 inches wide. Back in Huron National Forest, my first encounter had instilled a deep sense of caution. Over the years, these experiences had changed my relationship with the wilderness. While I still loved the outdoors, I approached it with a newfound respect and wariness, always aware of the unseen eyes that might be watching from the shadows. The legend of Bigfoot had become a very real part of my life, a constant reminder of the mysteries that lurk in the depths of the forest. The experience had lasting effects on both Lisa and me. She developed a fear of the dark and refused to go camping for a long time. Our once frequent outdoor adventures became rare, and we found ourselves sticking to more populated areas. The sense of safety and peace we once felt in the wilderness was replaced by an underlying tension and caution. One particularly restless night, I found myself awake at 3 a.m., unable to sleep. I sat on the porch, sipping a cup of tea, and gazed into the darkness. The memories of that night at Huron National Forest replayed in my mind like a haunting movie. Max sat beside me, his presence providing some comfort, but the feeling of being watched lingered. Determined to find some answers, I reached out to a local Bigfoot investigator named Mike. Mike had spent years investigating sightings and encounters with the elusive creature. He agreed to meet with me, intrigued by the details of my encounter. During our meeting, Mike listened intently as I recounted the events of that fateful night. He nodded thoughtfully, occasionally jotting down notes. When I finished, he leaned back and said, "John, your story is not unique. There have been numerous reports of similar encounters in this region. While skeptics may dismiss them, the consistency of these accounts suggests there's something out there." Mike explained that the creature I encountered was likely a Sasquatch, a species believed to have evolved alongside humans but remained hidden in the wilderness. He shared stories of other sightings and encounters all over Michigan, including a recent encounter from a family not so far away in the Manistee National Forest, who'd seen a similar creature on the road near their cabin. These accounts, he believed, pointed to the existence of an elusive and intelligent species. Our conversation provided some solace, but it also raised more questions. Why had the creature approached my cabin? Was it curious, or was it trying to warn me? Mike speculated that the Sasquatch might have been drawn by the presence of Max, or perhaps by the scent of our campfire. Whatever the reason, it was clear that these creatures were not just legends. In the months that followed, I continued to grapple with the impact of the encounter. I joined an online community of people who had experienced similar phenomena, finding comfort in their stories and support in their shared fear. We exchanged tips on staying safe in the woods and discussed the latest research on cryptids. Though I never returned to the same location in Huron National Forest, I couldn't entirely abandon my love for the outdoors. I chose safer, more populated areas for my hunting trips, always ensuring I wasn't alone. The forest, once a sanctuary, had become a place of mystery and danger. My experience had altered my perception of the world, making me acutely aware of the unknown lurking just beyond the trees. Years later, as I sit by the fire, I still think about that night in Huron National Forest. The memory remains vivid, a reminder of the fragile boundary between the known and the unknown. While the encounter had instilled a deep sense of caution, it also ignited a relentless curiosity. The legend of Bigfoot was no longer just a tale. It was a part of my reality, forever etched in the annals of my life. Please email your stories to us at camptownscary@mail.com. We can't wait to delve into your frightening adventures and share them with our community.